This recording will demonstrate the Meditech Expanse EMR for Goshen Health, including screens and functionality in place as of December 2018. The Meditech Enterprise Medical Record, or EMR, is a tool used by healthcare providers to view the healthcare data over the course of a patient's lifetime. Information will never purge from the EMR. It is a repository of data that can be viewed from multiple applications based on user access. To navigate between screens or to exit the system, click on the upper left corner on the Return To box with an E in it. Click the X to select the one screen to close at a time, or click Close All to totally exit the system. If the Suspend button is clicked in the top right corner, this will suspend the session. The user will need to re-enter their username and password. Then click on the session that comes up, and you'll be back where you left off. This can be helpful if you are going from one location to another and want to access the same patient or the same section of the EMR. The Meditech menus may vary by user. In this demonstration, the user will launch the EMR through the Physician Care Manager menu button. To find a patient, there are several options. One option is to click on any location. The different inpatient and outpatient locations will be listed, and you can click on one of those, look for the patient that you are searching for, and then you would just merely click on that patient's name. To find the patient by their name, you would type the last name and the first name. It can be a partial first name and last name. Press enter. When you see the patient that you want to select, just click on that in the middle of the screen. The summary panel will be the default view. As you look on the right side of the screen, these are the panels that we will be talking about today. If this is the first time that this user has viewed this patient, some of those panels will be in red font. As you go through and look at that information, they will turn back to black font. The header at the top of the page is static and will stay the same and show the same information regardless of which section of the EMR you are looking in. The eye icon would show some basic information that may have been entered during the registration process. If there is a camera icon here in the top left, that indicates a picture was taken of the patient in registration, and you can click on that to view it. The patient's age, gender, birth date, admission status, the unit that they're on, and the room number will show in this top left corner. In the middle of the header, the code status or resuscitation status will show in red. The patient's height, weight, BSA, and BMI will show in the middle, and the patient's allergies and adverse reactions. If you're viewing multiple visits or you're viewing a visit that the patient is discharged, the second line will be blank. There will not be a height and weight that will be showing up there. The V number shows as the current visit number or account number. The M number is the medical record number, and then the E number is the EMR number. If you are viewing multiple visits, the word multiple will show here instead of the visit number. The summary panel has several different sections. The first section is the clinical button. This has patient history information, medical history, surgical history, family history. Allergies and adverse reactions also show here. If the patient is a current inpatient, they will show their active medications will be listed here. If they are not a current inpatient, that may be a blank list. The home medication list will show at all times. These are the patient medications the patient is taking at home. Then the fields here near the bottom of the section may have information just depending on what types of things have occurred for this patient. This is the preferred prescription pharmacy, and any immunizations that have been recorded will show in that section. The legal indicators button shows data that has been documented for specific questions over the patient's stay. One of the more important pieces in this section is the advance directives information, and that will show here if it has been documented. The first default is the selected visit, the one that you have selected to view. That may not be the most recent visit, so if you wanted to see the most recent or up-to-date information for all the visits, you would click on the All Visits button. Demographics will show for the patient, the guarantor, the emergency contact information, if it has been asked in registration, and insurance information. Just a note about the emergency contact information, this is also asked by nursing during the admission assessment to the unit. So that would be documented in the patient care panel, which we will review later in the tutorial. If there are outpatient appointments, they would show under this button. Authorizations or referrals, again, more of an outpatient scheduling type thing, that would show here if those have been documented. I'm going to select a different patient to show you the surgeries button. So if the patient has had surgeries, those would be listed under the surgeries button. They would show up one by one. In this case, there's only one. If there were multiple, the black arrow indicates that you could sort if you wanted to sort by any of these headers here. And again, anytime you see a black arrow like this, it indicates that the header, the information could be sorted in that way. The care team will show any physicians, providers who have been associated to this patient. The care team by visit is listed when there may just be one visit. If there are multiple visits that might have some different information, this care team current would also be lit, and you can go back and forth to see if there are differences by visit. The history and problems panel will default to the problem list and shows problems that are active. These have been entered by the patient's physician. If a problem has been resolved or deleted, the past button will also be lit. And both active and past problems will show when clicking on the All button. The patient history button here shows the same information that was at the top part of the summary panel. The overview button shows both the active problems and the patient history information. The new results panel is not lit for this patient. What you would see there is if there are new results within the last 24 to 48 hours, those you could see in that time frame. Lab results and reports, imaging type reports, will show up in that section. The lab reports would show at the top of the screen. The imaging reports would show at the bottom of the screen. Clinical panels are customized screens that consolidate information from all aspects of the EMR into one screen. If there is data for the patient that is pertinent to the panel, it will show up there. One example is the diabetes panel. Any of this data that has been documented on the patient will show up there. You can look at different time frames by clicking on the buttons at the bottom of the screen. To go back to the panel list, click on the Panels button. The panels that are in the current list are a standard list, so this will be updated and revised over time. Vital signs will display all of the vital signs that are documented in discrete fields. This will not display vital signs that have been entered as free text in a note in some other area as free text. Vital signs can be graphed, and there are other areas that you will see the graph button at the bottom of the page. So the functionality will be shown here with vital signs, but it works the same any place that you see the graph options. If you want to see all of the vital signs graphed, you just click on the graph vitals and you can see they are all graphed there. You can change the time frame if you want to see a better idea of how that graph moves up and down. If you want to see just a few of the different measurements as a graph, find the measurement that you want, the word, temperature for instance, right-click and then click on the graph word. Then choose your second measurement or your next measurement, graph, and then click on the graph button at the bottom of the page, and it will just bring up those two measurements as you chose. Again, you can select the different time frames at the bottom. I&O will display and calculate intake and output from documentation on nursing interventions and from the IV spreadsheet on the electronic medication administration record. The buttons at the bottom can be used to edit the display. The various measurements can be graphed as we indicated in the vital signs panel. To see the cumulative I&O, click on that button at the bottom right corner of the screen. This will show the total information for the patient's entire stay. Medications. This panel shows various views, and I will only show the selected visits option, but you can click on all visits if desired. Because the patient is an active inpatient, there will be a medication list. This is showing the active medications that the patient is currently taking here in the hospital. The MAR button shows the medication administration record. This is a view-only screen. It cannot be edited, but it does provide helpful information on the specific administration times, maybe non-administration, etc. information, more detailed than just the medication list. The medication snapshot will show a list of all medications, different types, the home medications, the admissions on this visit, and discharge. And they will also show the providers that are associated to those medications. To open that screen to see more detail, you would click on the plus sign and then again on the minus sign to collapse. The current infusion or titrations will show a view-only screen of the IVs that are running for that patient, any other infusions that may have been given during the patient's stay and that are ongoing. For the laboratory panel, I'm also going to switch to a different patient. I'm going to select specific inpatient visits in the last 90 days, and that can be done anytime you are selecting multiple visits for a patient. It would bring up this screen. The default is to the selected visits. The laboratory test will be displayed by test type initially. You can also click on the all button. The different test types, there could be more. This will depend on which results are there for this patient. If there are no results for a certain test type, there will not be a button. So there could be more than what is showing here. If the results are in an abnormal range, they will show in yellow with an L for low or an H for high. If that result is a critical abnormal, that will be shown in pink. And there will also be a bubble that may show that some comments about that specific result and was it reported to the provider. Microbiology, you can, again, click on selected visits or all visits. This will show any pending or final microbiology results. If they are pending, that will say that in the procedure or result column. Otherwise, it will say final. If there's a report associated to that test, you can click on the report icon in this column, and it will actually bring up this box. Then you click on the words here, and that brings up the detailed report of that microbiology test. If sensitivities were performed, there will be a pound sign in the grid column. Clicking on the pound sign will show the details for susceptibility and for the minimum inhibitory concentration. Blood bank will show if there were any blood products that were transfused or any blood bank tests that were done for this patient. The product summary shows the specifics about that blood product. If there was more detail on the blood bank tests, that would show up under this button. If there were transfusions that were actually given, that would show up here, and then any pertinent reports. Actually, I still want to stay on this patient. The reports panel will show history and physicals, progress notes, imaging reports, scanned documents. Again, there are types of reports, and you can see the different buttons that are here. So that will also grow, or if there's just a few reports, you may see them like that. There are certain icons if you need to see the report, the narrative report, that is this icon. Some of the tests will have cameras where you can actually, with imaging reports, you can actually see, there are none shown here, but you can actually see the actual X-ray or imaging report. That would be different from just seeing the narrative report. Any scanned documents will also have a camera icon, and that might fall under the general button. If I click on the camera icon, I can see the scanned document. I can zoom in by clicking on this icon, and then I can go back. I can sort by any of the headers here. If I'm in the all, if I want to sort by the name of the exam, I can do so by just clicking on any of the headers. The next panel is the patient care panel, which will document nursing and ancillary documentation. There can sometimes be a lot of information that is loaded here, so it is helpful to sort using the different buttons in this second line. The initial view will show the date or chronological. And you can see that that can be a very long list. The most common way to sort is by name of that's the name of the assessment or the intervention. For an example, if you just want to see one specific piece of documentation, you would click on View Snapshot, and that will show you the most recent of that piece of documentation, that assessment or intervention. To view history, that will show all instances of that piece of that one assessment, that piece of documentation. In this case, all of the examples show on this screen, but if there were more than could show up on the screen, the earlier and the later button would be lit up, and you could choose an earlier or later time. There will also be a calendar button lit that you could select a specific date or a specific time. The documented by will allow you to sort by the care provider, so a specific person if you want to just see their documentation. The provider type allows you to filter by the type of provider. And the cosign button will show if there was documentation that was cosigned, who that was and what their monogram was. The plan of care will show just that, the care plan that has been added, updated, maintained for this patient. The history will show responses from the questions that were asked possibly on admission. If there are questions that were answered with a positive, this is only going to show the positive responses. Then this button, all responses, will show everything that they reported on, and here you can see all of those responses were on no. The notes panel will show free text notes that have been entered, and those mostly will be nursing, but there are some other ancillary departments who document in this section. This also will be a section where the buttons will add depending on the type of note. In this case, there are just two different types, nursing notes and nutrition notes, and you can click on either one of those. To select a note, click on the box and you can view selected, and that will show you the text of just that one note. If I want to see multiple dates, different types of notes, I can then say view selected dates, and I can see all those ones that I have selected. To select all of them, click on the check mark at the top and it will check all the boxes, and then you could say view selected dates. You can do the same thing for either button. You can do that selecting and sorting within any of those buttons. This concludes the demonstration of the Meditech Expanse electronic medical record.